Okay, so Patricia, I'm going to present you, and while I do this, you can share your presentation, okay?
Okay, that's right.
Okay, so Patricia, she holds a PhD in letters from Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. She conducts research in the field of Gothic literature and fantastic universes, more specifically with literary vampires. She has been a member of Abralic, Brazilian Association of Comparative Literature, since 2019. And she's a member of Gothic Studies Group at the State University of Rio de Janeiro, UERJ, my home as well. She worked as a teacher in letters and pedagogy courses at several renowned colleges, but currently works with basic education in the areas of Portuguese and English in private schools. So Patricia's here with the presentation Giulia Moon and her Dama-Morcega, Intertextuality Among Brazilian Vampires. Patricia, whenever you are ready.
Okay, is it okay the sharing?
Yeah, it's okay.
Ah, okay, that's right. Because we start getting nervous with when we see these problems, then we say, "Oh my God, maybe I'm gonna have the same problem." But no, all the vampires will help. That the presentation will be will be okay with technical problems. Well, it's a pleasure for me staying here talking about the vampires. It's my second year here, so it's very nice. We are always looking forward to have this conversation and have this presentation. And today I'm going to talk about a Brazilian writer. So it's Giulia Moon. She is also an illustrator and publicist. She's called by her friends Auntie Jill. And here is very funny because if any rice has the queen of damage, we have the auntie of vampires. So she's very accessible with her fans, and she's always willing to talk about her vampires and other subjects. In 2000, she made part of the group Tinta Rubra, that was considered by the author Adriano Junqueira to spread vampire and horror literature. Unfortunately, Adriano Junqueira passed away some weeks ago, but her group was continue with there's not the group anymore, but all the people that were inside the group, in some way they work with vampire stories and horror literature. So it's very nice to see that it was a good group and a group that had blowed. So she's considered also the main female voice of the vampire literature in Brazil. And it's very, very interesting because among her literary works, she has 4 collections of short stories. I put the names in English and in Portuguese. In Portuguese are the official ones, but I think it was nice to understand the meanings. So I made the translation very free about these books. So the first one that she has, it's Moonlight, and it was published in 2003. After that, in 2004, we have Vampires in the Mirror and Other Obscure Beings. And we also have in 2006, The Bat Lady. That is our object of study. So it calls a Dama-Morcega. And in 2014, she wrote Mortal Flowers. She also wrote a saga about a vampire named Kaori, which has 3 novels so far. Kaori is a Japanese millennial vampire who now lives in São Paulo, Brazil. And she has a long fight with another vampire and other vampires. So it's been a very good story about the evolution of this vampire, how a vampire in Japan arrives in Brazil and continues here with some stories. So it's very interesting to think about these Brazilian vampires, right? That is not all the Brazilian vampires. There are some points in Europeans or in other vampires. So this is the sense of the intertextuality that is fascinating. And she also has other collections and other themes that she produced, like Me, the Mother-in-Law in 2012. 2013, it was Love of a Wolf, Chronicles of Love, Blood, and Werewolves. So in this place, she started to talking about werewolves, that is, it's near the vampires, right? After she produced in 2015 a tale in the Supernatural collection Vampires, and in this book we have other Brazilian authors that they worked with this vampire theme. In 2017, she published feline stories and the Gothic who didn't like ghosts. So she is a very prolific author. So it's very nice to think about all these movements. And usually her tales are relatively short, full of action, mystery, and seduction. So she invites her readers to get to know the vampire world. It's a parallel in the underworld of our daily lives. So it's very nice to think about this another a different world, but together with our day by day. Her vampires are mostly female ones. They are strong, independent, and self-confident creatures. And she says that they don't fall in the cliches of the vamps, the seductive women. They go further. She says that in the Death Flower, she says that she calls her vampires as death flowers, and she says that they grow in the shadows of the night. They are beautiful, seductive, but also cruel predators. This contrast between moonlight and darkness, passion and danger, is the keynote of these unusual girls. And when I was reading The Bat Lady, a Dama-Morcega, I started thinking about the intertextuality, because we are going to see that there are some points of contact. So the first thing to think about intertextuality, it's the Giulia Kristevas saying that it's a permutation of text and intertextuality in the space of a given text, in which several utterances taken from other texts intersect and neutralize one another. And continue with this sense, Graham Allen says that the text is not an individual, isolated object, but rather a compilation of cultural textuality, concerns a text emergence from the social text, but also its continual existence within society and history. So when you think about this, with this in mind, with this intertextuality in mind, she always talks about her vampires, and she says that her vampires were heavily influenced by Anne Rice's Vampires Chronicle. And here we can also see that by the picture, the slide to resemble the hair, the pose, and the photo beside the lust for her vampires. So it's very interesting to think about that. And when we talk about our study, the Bat Lady, her tale is divided in 8 parts. The first one, it's named The Caged Woman. It's described how the vampire appears in a freak show named Schiavo Fantastic Circles. And we are going to meet Schiavo, the tamer, Olavo Alencar, a doctor, and Agnes, the vampire captured in the underground of Paris. She can regenerate herself, and she suffered sexual abuse, and we can realize that it has been a long time because she has a light of memory. Remember how the tamer was young when she was captured, and she's described as a beautiful creature, a very beautiful woman. And it's interesting because the name Agnes comes from the Greek that means pure, chaste, holy, and docile. So it's the opposite of the animal or a beast or even a bat that sometimes she's presented in the short story. And the beginning of the part, the doctor has a private exhibition in 1904. But the day after, in a regular presentation with the audience, the Bat Lady kills her tamer, but she's also stabbed by the doctor. So that's the first part that we have all this context. The second part, it's entitled The Doctor. We discovered that the woman was rescued to serve as an experiment. And here we have some points of contact with Mary Shelley's creature in Frankenstein, 1818. And in this chapter, we are going to discover that the doctor suffers with epilepsy. And we are also introduced to José Bento, that is Olavo's friend. But José Bento has all the descriptions of the Brazilian writer Monteiro Lobato. That's a well-known writer here in Brazil. In the chapter, they say he was thin young man with very thick eyebrows joined together under a high pointed forehead. So, and he also discovered his profession, journalist. I put the picture from Monteiro Lobato. So this is the real character, and but she puts about José Bento. But we discovered that José Bento is the name from José Bento Renato Monteiro Lobato, the Brazilian writer. It's very interesting point. After, in the third part, called The Observer, after a month, the Bat Lady, Agnes and Olavo, are living in a district of São Paulo named Vila Mariana. José Bento continues to help his friend. So he used to go to his place, their place, to visit and to help. The other part is the experience. Here, it's very interesting because when we have the Bat Lady, with Schiavo, Agnes was becoming a bat. So he wanted her to become an animal. But with Olavo, the doctor, she's more and more human. So this is and the doctor start to making some experiences with with Agnes. The other part names Black Wings. Agnes will take care of the doctor because remember that the doctor has epilepsy, so he needs to be he needs to have some care. Okay.
Somebody has an audio.
So the other part, the name is The Beast. Agnes will become the beast of Slaughterhouse. She will hunt at dawn, and here we have a connection with the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1886 from Robert Louis Stevenson. She's a very delicate woman. She's a very delicate woman, but also a beast that kills in seconds. So we have this connection. Sometimes she's a lady, and sometimes she's a bat. Yeah, and the other part is Eyes of the Night. José Bento discovers that his friend was trying to heal himself with Agnes' blood. So the doctor, Olavo, tries to get the blood from Agnes just to recover himself. And the last part is named The Crossing. Here, Agnes meets José Bento after 100 years, and she will attest that he almost became an immortal because he has family, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So in terms of his works, he is an immortal because his works will continue for generations. He wrote The Adventures of Little Nose, The Yellow Woodpecker Farm. That's a book with a lot of imagination and fantastic creatures from the Brazilian folklore. So he creates a universe with this Brazilian folklore, putting some dolls that can speak, a corn that can walk. So it's very funny. And also the marquee that is a pig. So he created all this word that follow for many generations, all the imaginary for the kids. And as I said, José Bento Renato Monteiro Lobato was born in 1882 and died at the age of 66 in 1948. So here we don't have this connection with the reality because Monteiro Lobato, he died when he was 66 years old. And in the short story, we can see that he's more than 100 years. So it's very interesting to think about this difference from the reality. And at the end of the short story, there's a dedication to Giulia Pastrana and Monteiro Lobato. So in this moment, we are really presented to the intertextuality. Giulia Pastrana was considered the ape woman of the Victorian era, suffered from being exposed for many years in a freak show, even after her death, and even with she was presented after her death with her son, that was a baby that had the same problem as her. She had a hypertrichosis. It's an abnormal amount of hair growth over the body. And she was buried only in 2013 because she was she has been putting in a kind of freak show to people could see after her death. And she was buried only in 2013 in Mexico City, her city from origin. So it's interesting because we think about Giulia Pastrana, and in the beginning of the short story, we have that Agnes, the bat lady. So she suffered as being exposed as an animal, or a half animal and half animal and half a woman. So in this case, it makes the contact with this real story, sad story. And here, what's the short story present to us? The intertextuality from Annie Rice with the vampires, Mary Shelley's Creature, Robert Louis Stevenson with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the Brazilian writer Monteiro Lobato, and the ape woman Giulia Pastrana. But it also makes us reflect about the human nature, civilized or not. Who was the real monster? The tamer who wants to transform a lady into a bat, or the vampire who wanted to live forever in peace? So this is the things that we that calls our attention and makes us reflect. And thank you very much. These are the references that I use, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Patricia. Now we can open for questions really fast because we are kind of a hurry. But any questions over here?
I have one very short question. First of all, congratulations. And again, very interesting presentation, just like last year. We do remember you and the army of Brazilians who has just joined, invaded our conference, which is wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Patricia, I think that you said it, but just to confirm, none of these books have been translated into English. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a problem because it's not translated.
Ah, that's bad.
Yeah, but if everybody, if someone is interested, we can organize or try to send or do something to get to know these. My researchers now are to think about the Brazilian vampires, the authors that work with these Brazilian vampires, because we usually work with the classical vampires, Dracula, Nosferatu, all this, and I'm interested in the vampires that from the Brazilian people, right?
Exactly. Especially that it's so interesting for us from outside Brazil who know nothing about it and have no way to know about it apart from presentations like yours. So yeah, you have your homework for next year.
That's right. And it's interesting because Monteiro Lobato wrote a book about Saci Pererê. The name is Inquérito do Saci Pererê. Saci Pererê it's a folklore creature, and it has many connection with the vampire because he's a very brat child, but he goes to some horses or some animals and suck the blood. So it's interesting also. But I don't know if this book is from Monteiro Lobato is translated to English.
Probably someone would track him down by now.
Great. If nobody has a question, I'm going to make a very quick question, Patricia. It's very nice to see someone talking about Brazilian background over here. And I've already made a fast research about this, wrote a paper even about this aspect. And vampire is not a very popular creature in our contemporary cultural imaginary. From the horror characters, the werewolf is not as popular around the world as the vampire, but here in Brazil it's exactly the opposite. We have the werewolf more present. And since everything that I've read about this tends me to believe that this is because of our cultural aspects and our folkloric basis, because we have werewolf in our folklore and we don't have vampires. And the interesting thing is we don't have wolves over here now. So the werewolf is obviously colonized aspect that the Portuguese culture brought for us. My question would be, what do you think about this? Do you think that it is more because of these cultural aspects that we have the vampire not so present in Brazil and the folkloric aspect, or do you think that there's something else that could be pointed?
Yeah, we have the witch, yeah, Kuka. That is another folklore character that Monteiro Lobato put in his stories. And it's interesting because we don't have vampires in the beginning. We have a Mortalha de Alzira from a Mortalha de Alzira, but it reminds the Marta Morosa from now I'm help me, Yuri, if you remember the name in English. Morta Morosa, I don't know.
It's very specific. I think we just need to accept that we need to use the Portuguese name, and sorry
But
for people
I
who
don't
don't
know if
speak Portuguese.
people know the what I'm talking about, because we have the story that we have. It looks like a retelling the stories that had already had. So it's interesting because I start to thinking about these vampires and Brazilian vampires, and I can't figure that we have old stories. We have Saci Pererê, Cuca, but we don't have vampires. But nowadays, from 2000 from now, they have a very increased movement with new writers. So we have André Bianco, we have Giulia Moon, we have Marta Argel, we have some Brazilian authors that are telling new things from stories. For example, Marta Argel, she's a biologist, and she wrote a book, O Vampiro da Mata Atlântica, that talks about, it's for teens, and talks about with ecology. The vampire is not the seductive vampire, is the vampire like the zombies, the vampire that it's not clean, and it's different. It's a different approach. So we have this, yeah, and we also have André Bianco with Sete, the name of the book, that talks about vampires from Portugal arriving in Brazil. So we have this kind of organization with this vampires, Brazilian vampires,
Thank you very much, Patricia. And it's very nice, this paradox, because we have more werewolves in our contemporary culture, but we have more researchers of vampires in Brazil than of werewolves. Look at this paradox here in the event. We have tons of Brazilian vampire researchers. Anyone else has any question for Patricia? Well, if nobody else has any questions, I'm gonna move because no, Miguel Munoz raised his hand. Miguel.
Hi, everyone. I'm from Mexico, and I was thinking about the different elements that the culture has about the mythology of vampires. I made some research in Mexico. What about or originals people who lives in America before the colonization, and we find a lot of different elements that the vampire was in America before the European was here. Something like the Aztec culture in Chile has a lot of special, how can I say, special elements that refers to have vampires before the European culture. Do you have something like this in Brazilian? Because it's amazing that found elements that vampire was in a popular culture before the European arrived to America. Do you have something like that?
Yes, we have the native tribe that I'm not going to remember the name of the tribe, but they were a tribe that could fly, and they drink blood too. It's a native from Amazon, and it's interesting because I think it's Cunedimpins. I don't remember the name exactly because I'm not very good with the names, but they have this specific situation with native Brazilians. But it's not so common. It's I think I need to make more researches and go deeper with this. But we have some uh, some some uh, some aspects that we can have that it has in common. For example, we have here in Brazil a giant bat. It looks like a person. If you see this bat, it looks like a person. And it's also, I think, in Argentina and Brazil. So it's something together, but it's nice.
Yeah.
And we also have chupacabra from the folklore, but it's not so old. It's something from our time, But we have also chupacabra, yeah. But it's nice. I think it's wonderful to make researches with this. Every day we get something new, something different. It's very, very nice.
Yeah, because it's very typical that you have read a book about the vampire in the world, and Brazil never it's there. It's Mexico, Chile, Argentina as well, a lot of in Europe, but in Brazil it's nothing. It's so difficult to find something about Brazil related with a vampire, at least in literature. Probably Spain it's more speaking around the world, and we have a lot of authors about Spanish literature related with the vampire, but in Brazil or Portugal does have nothing. It's so real because it's amazing character that it doesn't explode in your country.
Yes, and it looks like there's a gap from the beginning and after 2000. There's a very big gap. And I think me and Yuri and the other researchers are the chosen one to try to get why we have this gap, and if it's really a gap or if it's just something that we don't know. Yeah, I think that's the archaeology the archaeology things to move and to check. Oh, here there's another vampire that I didn't know or nobody knows, and this is, I think it's a lot of work for us, for Brazilian people to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking in the last presentation, for Spain, Dracula was translated to the Spanish language in 1964. Yeah, it's so close to our contemporary for us. And do you have about the date when Dracula was translated to Portuguese?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But it's not something we have. Lúcio Cardoso, a writer, a Brazilian writer. In fact, he organized the Dracula translation. He just took off some chapters that he didn't want so good, and he organized many other things, and it's a very interesting thing because we have Dracula, the classical one, and we have Dracula from Lúcio Cardoso. That is it is intertextuality, but I think they need to put a sign on the cover of the book. It's not the real Dracula, the classical one. It's a translated, but he decided to make that easier. I don't know if it's it's good or not, but it's different. And I think they need to put on the cover of the book a kind of warning, you know, because some people buy that book thinking, oh, I read Dracula, but it's not the classical one, you know. And I really don't know when the first translation, but I think it's a good research to do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We were talking a lot of time about the Latin American vampires and in America the vampires literature, but I know that you have a schedule and continue. Thank you so much for your
After
your answers.
mail, I will put my mail on the chat. So if people wanted, we can talk with mail, and it's easy. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you for.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much, Patricia. Thank you, Miguel, for your participation with these questions. Carla is asking, Patricia, please share your research on Brazilian vampires when you can. We want to know more about it, the vampire presence in the world. Let's move on.